1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are finalizing the month of November and christening it with another film that has been brought to our attention by our good friend Brandon here. Brandon, why don't you tell us what movie you subjected us to this November?
Well, I ended up having us watch the Charles Martin Smith film Boris and Natasha in 1992. A spinoff, if you would, of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, starring the villains Boris and Natasha with their own live-action cartoonishly comic adventure as they try to find a very important microchip in order to turn back time. Yes. Any case. So I guess we'll start with you, Jake. Was this your first time seeing Boris and Natasha?
Why, no, it wasn't. And you know this because you showed it to me the first time I saw it. I don't remember, was this part of the movie Game, or was this something you tried showing like at game night, or what was I don't remember the exact specifics.
Could have been either, because it's one I probably would have wanted. I remember I was very keen on it and very happy I found a DVD copy.
Right. So I had seen it the one time, and it's been a few years. So this one had largely faded from my memory. And as I was saying in the advance notes, it's kind of weird because I grew up on the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. It was something I saw a lot when I was younger. And I certainly remember Boris and Natasha from that, as well as Agents Moose and Squirrel. What's that?
Moose and Squirrel.
Yes. And Fearless Leader and all that. I remember all that stuff from back in the day. And I remember when Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle came out, and I was like, ooh, I'm so excited. And then the reviews came out, and they trashed it. Like, absolutely trashed it. And so it killed my desire, and I never got around to seeing it. But I guess because I read so much about it at the time, I know Jason Alexander was Boris, and Robert De Niro was Fearless Leader, and I cannot remember who played Natasha in that version. But I always think of Jason Alexander when I think of it. And when I went to watch this, I was like, now who actually plays him? Oh, it's Dave Thomas. Oh. So I had totally forgotten who was actually in this movie. I'd forgotten a couple of fun cameos, and we'll get to those, of course, as we get to them. But definitely, I actually recently, for the first time, I got to see one of Dave Thomas's most famous roles. I finally saw Strange Brew for the first time, so that was still fresh in my mind with this one. And of course, I've seen enough MASH that I recognize Sally Kellerman from that. It was, it's an interesting movie. It is bad. There's no two ways about it. It's bad.
It's good to be bad.
Yes. Bad to be good and good to be bad. Yes, as the song says. And it is, but in a good way. It's entertaining. I really like the cheesy, over the top nature. I feel like they were trying really hard to make a live action cartoon. And I think they did a pretty decent job of it. There are elements that felt a bit jarring at first blush if you're comparing it to the old Hanna-Barbera. This was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, right?
I don't know.
I feel like
I don't know if it is or not, because that one's it's its own thing, I feel like, but it could be. I don't think it is, though.
I thought
Dave,
it,
do you
I thought it was.
It was not a Hanna-Barbera because along with like Roger Ramjet and Dudley Do-Right and Mr. Peabody, that was in that thing.
Okay, I knew it was related to Mr. Peabody. But okay, so they were
because they even mentioned the professor during the film. So there are definitely connections to other animation cartoons of the time. So in fact, I'm even surprised that they didn't have like someone come up and play Dudley Do-Right and stop them on like the expressway or something like that.
Yeah, they could have, instead of having them do a robbery in Kiev, they could have had them do a robbery in Canada and have Dudley Do-Right be the one to get them after them.
Yeah,
right.
They certainly could. So yeah, this was a well, like I said, though, I think with that idea of what I was going to say is there are a few elements that at first blush seem like, okay, well, that kind of did they really? I don't think they would have gone there in a cartoon. But then you think about it, and you're like, no, they would have. If you think of like some of the old, like Tom and Jerry and some of that kind of stuff, they did some dark shit in some of those. So I guess it actually does work pretty well.
And that one was very unconventional. That particular series was very unconventional in and of itself. Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Right. It was
a weird series.
But in a good way.
I never really got around to watching it much myself, but my dad, remember everybody called my dad Moose?
Right.
So I remember I was working third shift a long, long time ago, back when I was like 19, 20 years old. And the radio station I had on was doing this big giveaway with, I think it was a couple VHS with all kinds of Rocky Bullwinkle stuff on it, and a hat and a shirt or whatever. And I got through. I won it. And I won it for my dad, And he was just ecstatic. I was like, okay, here you go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to find while we were doing this. IMDb lists a few production companies, but not. But Viacom was involved, J Ward Productions, and a couple of others. But I guess those were Format Films, DePatie Frelong Enterprises. Yeah. So, I guess Viacom would at the end of the day. And J Ward Productions, I think specifically was the J Ward was like the one behind the series, I think. So there you go. Yeah. Not quite Hanna-Barbera, but one of the other groups at the time. But
yep.
A good one.
And I wasn't sure whether it was in the same line of like Schoolhouse Rock or something like that,
It does look similar art style to that.
Right. Yeah. So. But at any rate, good show, fun movie. Like I said, not what I would call a quality one, but it's certainly entertaining and worth, watching every now and then.
Indeed. Well, you know what? Since Tammy, you had that nice anecdote, well, I'll let you go next. Was this your first time seeing Boris and Natasha?
Yeah, it was my first. When we were watching it, David even said that my dad probably would have gotten into it just because um, he got into the Rocky Bullwinkle stuff, and the goofiness of it and everything, and like like you guys said, the kind of over the top acting and everything, which we think that they meant to do for it. I think this movie would have definitely been up his alley. He liked the stuff that was out there. Like because he was totally into all the Mel Brooks stuff, and um, he even got in. He even got into Toxic Avenger and got me to watch that. So my dad got into a lot of the goofy stuff. So I'm sure if he was still around, he would get into it. He might have. I wouldn't be surprised if he had seen it at one time. So yeah, it was fun. It was definitely over the top on a lot of things. Um, I see what you're saying about like trying to make it as goofy and everything as like an actual cartoon, but trying to do it live. You know, with some of the antics and things that were in it. So yeah, it was it was fun. It was definitely different, but it was fun.
Do it live. All right. Well, I guess finally, Dave, was this your first time watching Boris and Natasha?
Well, as your fearless leader, no, just kidding. This was a first time watch for me. I've had the film in my collection for some time. Just never got around to watching it until now, and I'm glad I finally had a chance to watch it. Of course, I didn't dig out my DVD for it, but that being said, I actually got into some of it. I do remember Sally from MASH. Although I do need to watch the show again in its full entirety. But that being said, I wasn't really a fan of the actor playing Forrest. I don't know why, but I remember the cartoon being much better than his bumbling acting. And the way I'm thinking voice-wise, I was thinking like John Astin, per se. And to be honest, this movie kind of, I don't know why, but I first thought of the Addams Family with the trains as set that Boris was playing with, because evidently that's something that maniacal evil people like to do, is play with train sets and destroy them. So,
I did have that thought myself with the train sequence. I was definitely thinking about Addams Family then.
And of course, you can't have Eastern European Slavic without like tons of vodka being drank.
Right.
That is a bad stereotype right there. But
and as far as John Lovett's narration, I thought John Lovett's narration was awesome. I think that was the best part of the film. That's what I actually think his narration kind of carried the film and gave it some legs, so to speak. So John Lovett's from Taxi, isn't he? Or no, that's not Taxi. But John Lovett's voice, and the way he narrated it.
Who do you have narrating it? Because I'm showing Corey Burton as the narrator.
Oh, Corey Burton. Okay, yeah. It sounded like John Lovett's.
I was trying to figure. I was like, he's in this. I didn't remember seeing his
No,
name.
I guess he's not. But his voice sounded like John Levitt's for some reason.
Huh.
I guess I didn't look it up. So, but
Yeah.
for some reason, his voice sounds like that. But
definitely sounded,
the way this is narrated, it reminded me of how George of the Jungle was narrated, and I think that's also another short series that was in the vein of this.
I feel like if you said earlier that it was the same people behind Dudley Do Right, wasn't George of the Jungle the same people that did Dudley Do Right?
George of the Jungle was it wasn't a part of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, but it was the same animators.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that was related. Yeah.
So
if they got to you thinking about one of their shows with that, then the guy did a very good job of the narration.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the show well enough to where I felt like I was kind of wondering, is it the same guy? But it apparently wasn't. But I was kind of wondering about that.
I had some facts mixed up, so sorry about that, folks. But I did enjoy the film at the end of the day, and I'm glad that I was able to see it. So let's get into it.
I'm glad I was able to finally bring it back to light. But I don't know why, but sometimes I like throwing out some things that are kind of obscure. And I ran into this when I was really young. I mean, I ran into this at around age 13. I mean, not young to some, but at the age I am now, 13 is very young. And
yeah,
I recorded, this is one of the ones, I used to love comedies. I used to hate horror. I used to hate drama. Basically, it was just comedy. I liked comedy and cartoons. That was about it. That was me as a teen, with occasional action and with some action and stuff thrown in there. But as a teen, I was kind of boring, I guess you could say, because I didn't like horror. I didn't like drama or art house. I didn't get into those until I hit college. But there were a few films that I taped and off of the movie channels and would watch over and over again. And this one most definitely hit that spot right there. I mean, it did an excellent job with that for me because my sense of humor, if you know, you know. And this one definitely hit right to my sense of humor back then and still does now a little bit. It's not as fun for me as it was when I was a kid, but darned if it's still not fun and enjoyable. And I love all the cameos in it.
Right.
For the John Candy cameo alone, it's worth having. So if you haven't checked this one out, it is on Tubi. And I really enjoyed it. I admit, I had the same issue as you did, Dave, at first, because I did watch the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon a lot when I was a kid. So I'll admit, Dave Thomas's portrayal of Boris is nothing like the cartoon character at all. But as I got older and as I watched it over and over again, I learned to really enjoy the portrayal regardless. And it's just it's a fun portrayal. It's not like the guy in the comic because Boris in the first off, Dave Thomas does not smile as Boris very often in that one. Boris in the cartoon always has that sneaky smile that you see on his face, even in the background here, and has this kind of weird, creepy sense of humor.
The way that he's portrayed always reminds me of that short, like, crook gangster that you always see with Bugs Bunny. And he's got that big lug that's always so dumb as rocks. And for some reason, Boris kind of reminds me of that. And his voice was always like.
And also, though,
I know which one you're talking about. The gangster they call is Rocky.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the big guy's name is, but he's like, "Okay, Rocky, okay." You know?
And I do like that Natasha's last name is Fatal.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she is basically being made. I mean, basically, they created the character originally to make fun of the femme fatale character.
Right. And then, of course, he is Boris Badenov.
And I even believe that there was some inspiration that Toriyama had from Boris and Natasha in the original Dragon Ball for some of those original characters as well.
Oh, I could see that.
So it definitely has some fun to it. But yes, it's just a unique treat. And I thought to myself, sometimes I like to bring something unusual. And this is one of those that definitely is kind of obscure these days. I am surprised it was on Tubi, but I'm glad. Definitely encourage people to watch.
One thing I didn't mention, or I don't think I mentioned, because I mentioned my familiarity with the rest of it, but I don't think I knew this movie existed until you told me about it and said, you need to see this. I'm like, that was a thing?
It just happened to be on HBO or one of those movie channels at the time, and I just happened to have the VCR in at the time.
Huh.
And I got it recorded.
I can just imagine Brandon talking to you like Johnny Bravo. Yeah, dude, man. Yeah.
So
Sure.
I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We start basically with the narrator catching us up between the 1960s, which is like, yeah, so we lost it about 1960 something or so. As they catch up to history, which only goes up to 1992, which, so,
Right.
and introduces Spotsylvania, which never quite got out of the Cold War, even though the Cold War was over. The Cold War was very much going on during the time that they had the original Rocky and Bullwinkle on.
Yeah.
Which is what these guys were really making fun of at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's kind of funny to see that. And then, of course, we have that setup where you have the mysterious agent with fearless leader, who I do say, sorry. Oh, well, who was portrayed very well, I thought, by the actor playing him, and going over this guy who actually fled the country, one of their scientists who developed this microchip, with a fairly entertaining film, which showed that the microchip has the ability to rewind time about 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how they start off with buildings being destroyed or making their jet fighters invincible. And then they're ending it with, we can fix things. And it shows Dick Van Dyke where he's about to trip over.
Right.
But what do y'all think of this setup?
Well, it's worth noting, and I can't remember if this is from the show. I'm guessing it might be. But they're talking about, when you were talking about the initial setup from the narrator, and they show us the map where Spotsylvania is sandwiched between WrestleMania and Ursylvania. I'm like, gotta love the names of these countries there. But
I remember turning to Tammy and saying, rewind 3 seconds. Well, you can do the same 3 seconds on a VHS tape.
Right. Oh no, VHS, that was always a pain. You wanted to go back 3 seconds, 5 seconds. It's like you're better off going back 30 seconds.
The moment to click the VHS, because you heard the whirring and then you heard the zzz.
Yeah. It was an interesting setup, definitely.
Yeah, you never got to rewind for seconds.
Yeah.
It was always like minutes. It's like, really? I didn't want to watch 10 minutes all over again.
Yeah.
God damn it! I'm still on the commercial break.
VHS. Now, there's something that many of our viewers may not even know existed, or have probably never watched anything on.
Or they're going to think y'all are old.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, I can relate with Brandon about recording stuff all the time. I had a VCR in the bedroom. I had a VCR in the living room. And there was plenty of times that I worked a shift that all the good stuff was on at night and I was working.
Yeah.
So they were both working.
And that was before they created VHSs that could skip over commercials for you.
See, kids, this was back when when they had the thing they called appointment television, but also things came on at a certain time, and that's when you had to watch them.
Back when we only had 3 channels, and when the president was on, they were on every single channel.
Oh, I wasn't that old.
Chance to watch anything.
Now, I could say there was 4 to 5, maybe 6 channels if you were super lucky.
I knew of other channels when I was really young.
Yeah.
But we only had the TV antenna, the black and white, and the 3. But I was still relatively young. I was around 6 when my father got the satellite.
Yeah.
And
I remember 6 channels for the most part until cable came out.
Yeah, that's actually how because cable didn't come to. See, I grew up in the mountains, so yeah, keep that in mind. Cable didn't even come to where we were until the 90s.
Well, my friends had the cable, but I didn't.
But my father loved the idea of a satellite dish because we can get so many channels.
Right.
So he had saved up all the money because my mother was paying all the bills.
I'm trying to remember what channel they played the Bullwinkle show on. I feel like it was
one of the 3, one of the big 3.
I feel like that because Fox played a lot of the cartoons, but not all of them. But I feel like it was a Saturday morning cartoon. I'm almost sure.
Yeah, that's how I got to know it.
I want to say CBS, but I could be remembering that wrong.
And I will say this. I agree with Dave, though. The guy who did the announcer in this really nailed that particular role. That was probably the closest to the original role as we could possibly get. Maybe Fearless Leader, but that's such a caricature. That wasn't that hard to execute. But darned if he didn't nail the voice. And he had fun. That guy had fun with it. You could tell.
Right.
But they did, to move it on, I guess. Of course, he's like, look, I'm not going to risk my cover over this. I'm going to help you get this chip, but we need a distraction.
You're right.
And,
Agent X, yeah.
Yeah, Agent X. And they're like, so what kind of idiots could you get to, do that? And that's when we shift over to Boris and Natasha.
Right.
Who are in Turkey. Is it Turkey?
To steal this egg.
To get the egg of Kiev.
Yeah. Were they in Kiev?
No, but the egg was the egg of Kiev.
Yeah, I was going to say, I did not feel very Kievish. Turkey sounds more likely.
Which tells me that if it's the egg of Kiev, they stole it in the first place.
You're right.
So,
did they call it the egg of Kiev? Well, it was. It did look like a Fabergé egg. It definitely did.
If you hear him at the end, he's saying, "Bring back the egg of Kiev." But and I remember and those things did come from those areas of the world. I mean, Ukraine, Slavic countries, Russia, Czech Republic. Or Czechoslovakia back then. So, of course, they're on the run, a nice little chase scene, and they have to make contact with the one-eyed man. Unfortunately, in the alleyway, all the men are one-eyed men.
And so is the dog.
Yeah. What did they call that? The alleyway of the dead.
It was like the alley of the
alleyway
damned.
of the damned.
Alley
There we
of
go.
the
Damned.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they are all the one-eyed man, like literally.
And what was the phrase that they kept on saying?
The four corners of Egypt belong to King Tut.
Yes. And I'm sure a passcode loses its effectiveness if you use it for every interaction.
Yeah, I was like, that's just they're a poor country. They can only afford so many.
Right. Random aside, real quick, that this, I don't think I ever had this thought before, but I had it in this one. We have this tiny ass country that is constantly trying to take over the world, but clearly not very good at it. And there's a duo of dingbats being dispatched by their overly theatrical leader on multiple occasions and losing one after the other mission. What does that remind you of, Brandon?
What would you say?
It's a lot. It reminded me a lot of Excel Saga.
Oh,
With Il Palazzo and F City, and
for all you know, they got it from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
they might have. Excel Saga may be making a direct reference to this series.
Shoot, they could have watched this movie for all we know. But it is funny how it goes. I do like how they all are the one-eyed man.
Right.
But they get them to the hot air balloon where they escape. But what do y'all think of that whole chase sequence? Egg of Kiev.
I swear, in the alleyway of the damned, I swear I saw Booger from Nerds amongst the cast.
That's a movie series we need to
look
one day.
like a Booger, and I turned to Tammy, and she was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Who do we know?
Well, I wasn't sure if it really was him or not.
Well, I wasn't either, but it sure looked like him. If it was him, he was only there for like a brief second.
Do we know who the actor that plays Booger?
Hold on. Booger, Nerds. That would be Curtis Armstrong.
Curtis Armstrong. I don't see him in the cast list.
Well, maybe he's uncredited. I don't know.
Right. Now, the guy chasing them, was that Colonel Gorda?
I think so, yeah.
So that was your boy, wasn't it? Sid Haig?
Yeah, Sid Haig.
You're right.
Yeah. So he was, yeah. I was a little surprised he didn't say anything.
He's still got a big old head in that. But I actually remember him from an earlier sci-fi series where he was a heck of a lot younger.
Right. One of several notable cameos. As we mentioned already, there are a few. We should probably mention Christopher Neame is the one who plays Fearless Leader. And I'm trying to remember what I've seen him in. I feel like I've seen him in something. He was in License to Kill. Yeah, and The Prestige. He's done a couple of things.
I need to get that.
All righty.
Any case, it is an interesting little sequence. They do manage to get out, and of course, he does say the line that does come back later, kind of foreshadowing. I thought you said there were only 2 of them. For a
Yeah.
moment, I thought I saw 3.
Oh, he was a maitre d' in Ghostbusters too.
Well, and then of course that comes back later on in the end.
Yeah. But
Actually, I can just.
Then we have a moment where they're up in the air in a hot air balloon.
yes, they are.
They were definitely there, and they get back to the country where they end up. Of course, being briefed by Fearless Leader, saying that you need to go to the United States and find Dr. Palovich. We can't tell you anything more than that. And I love how I was like, and if you feel you're being followed, ignore it.
Yes.
Well,
Don't worry about it.
I love their boat that they were going to take.
Yeah, because they were supposed to defect, so they're supposed to try and sneak out of the country. And every time that they try and do it, they fail. They try to.
They decided to take a rowboat, and what did they say? What did they say? Like 7 hours later, they realized America was a little further away than
on their run, McNally's. The Fearless Leader brought them to the heavily armed border, which they still couldn't figure out how to get across.
Right. They tried scaling a really, 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 really crazy mountain and
the Pennsylvanian Alp. They got Alp.
Yes.
Which you could almost imagine Frodo and Gandalf going up the same mountain.
Yeah.
And then Fearless Leader helped put them on the first plane to the home of the free, land of the brave, Trinidad.
Yes.
Which they caught the first plane over to the United States. What did y'all think of this whole series of them trying to figure out how to get across? And
I like the border fence.
They were pretty pathetic.
The fence was no longer than the length of my apartment building, and this was the border the big border that they were protecting.
Well, again, it's a small country.
heavily fortified border.
Yeah.
I think when you're in a country that nobody really wants to go into, and even fewer people want to leave, it's you don't need to protect your border that much.
Actually, you know what the Pennsylvanian Alp reminded me of? Mount Crumpet.
It is kind of funny how they just dig their frozen bodies ceremoniously back into the truck.
Right.
Fearless Leader getting even more frustrated every time.
He has no fear, but he is also losing his patience.
I do find it funny that they tried to take a boat across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, rowboat. That's
the best way to go across, after all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I could have seen them in that commercial with the Frenchmen in the canoe while they're singing "Alouette, Jante, Alouette, Alouette, Jante, Bloomerang."
But they do get to the United States where they are automatically beset upon.
Yeah.
That is great how those 3 cars just pull right up.
Right.
Like, we did it.
Didn't they say something like, and nobody suspected a thing or something to that effect?
Yeah. And then, of course, they're like, we defect.
Right.
And of course, they're sweating their balls off.
It's like, well, you two definitely look sincere, given the least sincere faces they could possibly make. Anyway,
Yeah.
where they're given a battery of tests, which they all do very poorly on.
Yeah.
Especially the lie detector.
Right.
Yes. No, and yes.
And then afterwards, he's grousing, those pigs. And Natasha, those pigs, what they do, Boris? they took my dynamite. Those pigs.
Don't worry.
Oh, what an adventure.
So is this your first experience with this, Dustin?
I have heard of this at some point in the distant past, but I don't even know what year this was from.
1992.
92? Okay, well, that would be why. Jeez. I thought there was something made around like 2007 or something.
That's the
The
Adventures
Adventures of Rocky and Bully.
Well, I think that was 2001, but yeah, that was the more recent one.
But at any rate, I guess I actually had never really heard of this movie before. It felt very postmodern. Is that the word I'm looking for? It was kind of... So I thought this was trying to be like a George of the Jungle kind of thing. But I guess that's probably where the idea came from for George of the Jungle was this, because this comes much sooner, apparently. So, kind of baffled here. But, yeah, it was weird, but, it was actually pretty good. I do not remember very much of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I saw it when I was really little. And the impolite thing I was going to say was it's a, dead person thing. Because not a whole lot of people remember it.
Well, it was in the 60s when it originally came out, but it did air on Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s.
It did for quite a while, yeah. I remember it up through the 90s, and then it just kind of fell off the radar.
Right.
So, which, I feel a little bit bad saying that, because I had a friend who was elderly, and he died kind of recently, and one of the things I got from... he was giving away a bunch of movies at one point, and I did indeed get like a big DVD season collection of Rocky and Bullwinkle from him. So, yeah. Maybe that's why my brain went to that. Nice. We're not doing great, folks. Sorry. Anyway, so I enjoyed this. I had no idea where it could be going, and it arguably went nowhere, but it was a good time. So 92 though, wow, like I thought it looked very old, but I was like I was so sure that it was a more recent movie that I was like, well, maybe they put a filter on it, but why is it full frame?
So it's only over 30 years old. Sad. Boy.
I mean, I'm technically older, but not by much. I mean,
yeah,
93. I think the first movie I can remember seeing in a theater, like start to finish, was Jurassic Park in 93. So if this is from 92, then dang. Is this related to that Flintstones movie that came out around the same time?
I don't know that it was a direct relation, but it might have been the people behind them may have been thinking similar things.
that whole idea of taking older cartoon properties and doing live action adaptations.
Wasn't Flintstones a little later than this? I feel like that
was... Flintstones was 93. Would have been 93. Okay. The reason I bring the Flintstones up is because this is 92, and Jurassic Park was 93, and that was actually a double bill with the Flintstones.
Wow.
The Flintstones, it was at a drive-in, so we saw the Flintstones followed by Jurassic Park, and I remember maybe a couple minutes at best of the Flintstones. It was not.
This was a time where there were a lot of old TV shows being turned into movies. Like Addams Family was 91. I think Addams Family Values was 93. You had Maverick in 94. You had Mission Impossible was 96. You had a lot of TV shows being turned into movies during this time period. And George of the Jungle was 2000, 2001, something like that?
That was 97, man.
Was it?
1999,
never
if
mind.
I remember.
Okay.
1997.
I
I
think
thought 99 was Tarzan and 97 was. Okay,
99 was Tarzan.
That's right.
Dudley Do-Right also came out
That's
around
right.
that same time.
Then you had that earlier Jungle Book live action, but I don't know when
Right.
that was.
That I think was 93. I think.
I would have said 95 because that's the. I got it.
1994.
94.
Okay, I got it. I got it on VHS for Christmas in '95, so that was why I made that guess.
I ended up getting a Korean copy of the Jungle Book, that live action one. I actually saw that one in the theaters, believe it or not.
It was kind of good,
but then I don't know why it never came to act anything other than a VHS. You know,
Was it?
It's not even on Blu-ray.
Or is it somebody else?
It was by Disney.
Yeah. The original one was actually. It's kind of funny because a YouTube channel that I didn't follow for a while when they were actually active. That they call themselves like the Killian Experience. He did a whole Disney live action remake thing, and he started with all of those early Disney live action remakes that they did before the horror period that is the current live action remake period. And he led off with that. And it was I thought of stuff. Oh, I never even heard of this before that. But well, I guess we'll get back to it. God, well, they do a battery of tests. I do like. I mean, a lot of the gags that they do here are very basic. I mean, the whole they shine the light in his ear, and of course, it goes through the head out the other end.
It's still worth a chuckle, though.
Yeah, which is the point at least. So.
Right.
Mission accomplished.
And I'll admit the whole Rorschach test was hilarious.
It's a cute, fluffy little puppy. What was it? Carrying a bomb into the embassy.
Yes, carrying bomb into a small embassy. I like how basically it's bomb explosion.
Right.
Machine gun.
I
can't look at anything like this without thinking of the Child's Play the Problem Child ink blot. If anybody remembers that, what do you see? A pretty butterfly. That's not what he sees. He sees blood. He sees guts. You see those 30
Yeah.
Was it the first or the second one where he was idolizing a serial killer?
That was the first one. That was the serial killer's trying to sneak out of prison, and they're giving him ink blot tests. That was his ink blot tests. He's just lying.
Oh, right. Problem Child was actually 1990.
I got too excited and I shouted.
Problem Child 2 is 91. There was a third one? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, the third one is unrelated to the first two stories. It's just kind of a standalone, and it's fine. The first two I think are better. But the third one is kind of more fun because it doesn't have to do anything. It's just an adventure that realistically I think would have to take place between 2 and 3. Well, between 1 and 2. Bleh.
So we have, of course, we have our FBI people. We've got Willie. We've got Agent Kaufman, and then you have your other faceless ones, and most of the team is telling Kaufman, who is the head of the guy, who's the head of the whole thing. No, you're not actually thinking about letting them in the country, are you? And then Willie's like, "Hey, this might be fun," and he ends up letting them in the country mainly because okay, we gotta know what the heck these people are coming here for. Nobody defects from Pennsylvania.
Right. So
they got their curiosity set. So they give them a really nice setup.
So the guy that plays the main guy, what was it, Sheldon or whatever it was? He's the guy that played Mo Green in The Godfather. Huh. So he's actually got a really notable role, as well as some other weird ones.
I would love to get the defection package that they got.
Yeah. It's like, and that was one thing that I felt like maybe the timing of this was kind of interesting because, just the things that they got, I have heard people making those claims, and I'm like, no, that's not how the government works. Apparently, it does in this movie, though.
It does in this movie, but this movie is not exactly the best one to, pull real life facts out of.
Right. But
I do love how they're just dancing around. Yes, we fooled them, as they're being mic'd and recorded and monitored by
right. Yeah, that kind of zoom out where you see all the people all around them. Yeah.
And that's after Natasha is
all of us pan through the window. All of us pan through the wall.
Yeah. But it's they go in, they show them, Willie shows them the apartment, and they're thunderstruck, and she's like, how many other family live in here? And he's like, no one, this is yours. I was like, what?
And they're like, no, wait, no.
Right.
They thought he was messing with them.
Right.
Not to change the subject, but we're talking about older cartoons and stuff. I have the TV out of the background. Underdog. Do you remember Underdog?
I liked Underdog. I don't know if it was affiliated with these guys, but I did used to watch Underdog when
it was
on TV.
Well, they just showed part of the movies coming on, but they were showing the cartoon at the beginning of the movie.
The cartoon was affiliated.
And the cartoon reminds me of the cartoons we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I do have the live action movie of that from 2007 somewhere on Blu-ray, and I am looking forward to seeing that.
The original Underdog was also animated by the same company that made Rocky and Bullwinkle, Tennessee Tuxedo, Dudley Do-Right, the Peabody and Sherman, George of the Jungle. I can't think of any others, but I'm sure there were others.
Yeah, the live action movie's on right now. So they were showing parts of the cartoon at the beginning. So.
They had their own animated universe, much like Hanna-Barbera and some of these others did, if you think about it. And some of them did cross over, and then of course got their own shows. Well, shoot, even things like later on when you had what was it, Animaniacs that came out with Spielberg, and they had their giant universe of spinoffs and crossovers.
Right.
So it's how a lot of these did. I mean, this was the '60s animated. Mm-hmm. So I guess they would have been going toe-to-toe with Hanna-Barbera at the time.
Mm-hmm.
What was the company called?
That's a good question. I don't remember.
Well, we found it earlier. It's...
And you don't remember?
That company.
Yeah, it's that company. I guess... Well, no, wait. This is... that's not it. It was the name of the producer.
Was it Viacom?
Well, Viacom was involved. Yes, Viacom. But I feel like that was more the people that were behind it being aired. It was we found it earlier. I'm sorry, I gotta look it up here.
Well, we'll keep going while you're looking that up.
Yeah.
So they get down to brass tacks.
What happened?
Was it J.D. Ward?
Yeah. Something Ward. J. Ward, I believe it was. J. Ward Productions.
They're trying to go out and meet with Kalishak, their information broker, but they get halted by their neighbors dropping in, who are Harv and Toots.
Mm-hmm.
And Toots kind of puts a lot of the female empowerment stuff in Natasha's head, which I guess makes some sense because Boris is obviously not the most woman empowerment figure himself. Having her use the chair to sleep and having her carry all the luggage and stuff like that. It is kind of they end up getting basically held off for almost a night while they're having dinner and talking. I will say one of my favorite parts of this film is where Harv is like, "Yeah, you see that? You can't even damage it. Yeah, hit it as hard as you can." And then you just hear that like in the background, like, "Oof!" And it flashes back with him just eating some walnuts while Harv is laid over on the ground.
There was some good physical comedy in this here and there.
What did y'all think of Toots and Harv?
They seemed really sincere, but also kind of annoying, which stereotypical like, hey, new neighbors kind of thing.
Always showing up at inopportune moments.
What you find out later was by design.
Right.
For a minute, I thought they were the assassins.
Huh.
And of course, they also introduced the man wearing the strange shoes.
Right.
Which like, would these shoes be used to identify him later?
Yeah,
snake oil shoes.
Subtle with that,
yes.
And then they like called it out, and it's like, well, okay, I'm less bothered by the obvious movie trope now.
Well, they were obviously using the trope, and then they were making fun of using the trope at the same time, which is always fun. But they go to Kalashak, and he is one of the great remembered cameos in this movie, which is by the late John Candy,
Right.
and who definitely must have a stomach of iron himself because he's eating freaking raw potatoes.
Right.
You gotta have an iron stomach. Those things are freaking poisonous raw.
Right, but it is one of the running jokes in this movie that I think they reference potatoes a couple of times. Is I guess like their food or whatever. But yes, I did like how even though I hated seeing what happened to him at the end, the fact that they used a potato grenade was great.
That was kind of it's not gory, but it was definitely a gratuitous explosion.
Yes. Yes.
I like how you could clearly see quite a lot of like potato in that.
Mm-hmm.
Which the fact that Kenny in South Park in the first episode, his heart got exploded by a baked potato in his fucking
They
heart.
did that in the movie.
That was the movie.
Well, they did that in the first episode too.
Oh,
I don't think they did.
I'm pretty darn sure they did.
Aliens in the first episode.
what was the lyric in the song? I can't remember. But anyway.
But
Canada.
they did. Oh yeah, he was making fun of them hard up until they mentioned Kalashak. He was like, not Kalashak. God, what was the doctor's name?
Anton something.
Paulovich.
Yes.
And he was like, "You guys are way over your head."
Right.
And it was great, like, search your soul for the answer. There was a lot of the subtlety, which of course is lost on these two.
Yeah. Well, he's working as a shoe shine fella, and he shines their shoes, hawks a big loogie on them and then wipes them off.
And then later he realized that he had written something on the bottom of one of their shoes.
Not until much later. But
but it does point them in the right direction, which is towards this fashion photographer.
Right, Manelli. But they don't make contact with him until Natasha breaks the rule that they were given of keeping a low profile.
Well, I mean, they automatically just
That
make
model.
her a model.
What's that?
She becomes a model. Like, what
Yeah.
like, don't draw any attention. All the attention.
It is kind of funny how that even the narrator is like, so, the Mr. X had nobody to watch. The FBI was getting bored and showed them like asleep.
Right.
And it's like, yeah,
It's like, oh, we're doing this now.
And of course, her stint as a model leads to probably the best cameo in the movie and one of the jokes that has actually aged better with time. Because when this movie came out, John Travolta was kind of wandering in the wilderness. It was 2 years before Pulp Fiction, so he hadn't had his career renaissance. And he hadn't killed his career with all that Scientology bullshit. And so now we have this cameo where he shows up, asks for Natasha, and Boris slams the door in his face. And that's it. I just absolutely love the idea that John Travolta shows up, just have a door slammed in his face. That is great.
that was the best cameo contender right there.
Art imitates life.
Yes.
But yeah, the thing, of course, it drives a wedge between Boris and Natasha, with her looking at that kind of liberated, free woman thing, and of course him being resistant to the whole thing and angry, but then trying to sort out his feelings for her at the same time. I love the little depression thing there, and you go back, and he ends up sleeping on the park bench.
Yeah.
She takes him back, but they go to the whole thing, as Dave was saying, with the trains exploding. And then, of course, they pan over to all the bottles of vodka that he was drinking.
Random note here, though. The narrator goes to great lengths to mock the guy's checkered shoes, but they say nothing about Natasha's checkered gloves. And I'm like, I don't know. Those seem a little stranger to me than those shoes did.
This is early 90s fashion we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
she's wearing that thing with the jeans and the denim.
Right.
That's straight 90s. That's early 90s right there to a T.
Yeah.
That outfit alone could have told me what decade they made that film in.
Well, like right on the tail end of the 80s, early 90s. Like there's some 80s-ness there too, but yeah. But you're right, the denim outfit is more 90s, but like the one with the gloves, that seemed more 80s. But.
So what do the rest of y'all feel about this whole fashion part and the breakup, the temporary breakup between Boris and Natasha?
I thought it was cool. For a while, I thought they were maybe going to become like a more serious movie where she's like, why do we live over in wherever the fuck? Like, I thought they were maybe going to defect like for real, and then that didn't really end up happening, but it's kind of like, if they were smarter, I think they would have probably like looked around and been like, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of great.
Right.
So that was the scene where I thought the movie was going to go in a totally different direction.
Well, Boris
I wasn't sure at first what they were going to try to do with Natasha's character, because I almost thought that they were going in the direction of a Cruella de Vil type character ish, just a little bit, because she looks a little bit like Cruella in a way. But I guess that's just me.
Like European or?
Well, Cruella was a designer, so so the way she was acting was the way Cruella was acting towards.
Well, I mean, the take that they did originally with her was a James Bond femme fatale character. That was the original concept in the cartoon. And they kind of hit that okay in the in the movie. I thought she was far more on than Dave Thomas's Boris, though she was also a bit lanky for that. But then again, she did get her haircut from the Pennsylvanian hero, Mo, the Three Stooges.
So maybe that's why. That is one reason why Cruella makes sense as a comparison, because she is so gaunt and lanky and bony and seems to be swimming in her outfits. I guess I could see that. Yeah.
There we go. All three of them done. But yeah, it was a interesting little interlude until we got to the phone call that they finally were able to make contact with the photographer, who set up a shoot, which of course Boris, back energized, decides that the advancement in his character growth was like, I'll carry it. You might drop it with the bag,
right?
But hey, that is an advancement with the character over what he was in a sense.
Yeah.
So I can't really hold that entirely out.
And I guess in his in his slight defense, he is a moron. So some of these concepts he probably literally never thought of or heard of before. So,
But it is interesting. He's like, yes, Natasha's like, yes, Boris, you are a master of disguise. He shows up there dressed as a freaking pirate.
Right.
He gets in a fight with the pretzel vendor.
And gives him a doubloon. He's like, what is this? It's a doubloon.
Hey, doubloon.
I don't have any money.
And then he ends up dressing as a police officer, which is really bad when the shootout occurs, and he's hiding behind the one woman screaming in the middle. That also, I don't know what it is, but that one also cracked me the heck up.
Accurate, honestly.
But he basically, the photographer let him know that he was the one who helped get Pavlovich out of the country and was protecting him and letting them know, you guys are actually being set up by your own government. But before he can tell him who was what the whole thing was about, he gets assassinated by the man in the funny shoes. And they find out that Willie actually is the agent after them because he was wearing the ring of the assassin, which is basically just a high school ring, a class ring. But, I guess assassins have their own assassin school class.
We didn't find that out until after he was assassinated, but yeah.
They find it out right beforehand, because when they come back and they're trying to figure out what the whole potato chip clue is, they're listening back to the recording that they made.
Yeah.
Where he's saying the ring of the assassin, and it turns out that they figured out that Willie was the one, but Willie disappeared. He doesn't show up again dead until a little bit later.
Well, at the hotel suite.
Yeah, which they're not quite there at that point. Yeah. But what did y'all think of this whole interaction?
Well, you like you said, you mentioned the chip clue, but I don't know if you mentioned specifically how they came across it. But as he's dying, he sees a bowl of chips and he reaches for it, and it's blindingly obvious what he's trying to say, and of course they don't get it.
Well, they're not exactly the most intelligent. I mean, even Natasha, who appeared to be the more intelligent of the two in a lot of cases, still isn't all that competent herself.
Right. She's a little quicker on the uptake than Boris, but
only a little.
it's a low bar.
The Ring of the Assassin.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Was that when the FBI agent does take a shot to the leg the first time?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is.
I believe so.
But back at the apartment, they end up getting the apartment shot up. Of course, after Boris assures her, "Is like, well, you're perfectly safe so long as you're with me," and then boom.
Oh, that was a little bit funny.
Which did lead to them disguising themselves as the O'Beef family, which
Subtle.
which I did find as like Mr. and Mrs. Obese, and they're like, O'Beef.
We're Irish. Yeah.
And the elevator is, of course, like out of order, so they're going up 30 floors.
Case of elevator, use stairs. Yes. Yeah.
And of course, the next time the bellhop sees them, he's like, "God, you lost a lot of weight in a little bit of time."
Yeah, they took off the disguises, and they were somehow able to pass it off as, well, we went up all those stairs.
Well, he told them like that Willie was their dietary coach.
Right.
And convinced him that he's some psychic dietary coach.
Right.
Which they find him dead in the closet.
Yeah.
So they and this train schedule. So they try to dispose of the body and then run into their neighbors.
Yeah.
Now, one of the clues that you find out later, once you come back in the movie, that tips it off is if you notice that they are at a moose convention.
Ah.
Yes, like a Moose Lodge type convention.
Ah. Okay.
Oh my God.
It's a little hint that they give you.
I did not catch that. No.
Well, it's one of those things that you go back and you watch it again and you realize, oh, okay, I get it. They were hinting at something.
I don't remember the original show enough to remember what the dynamic was between the two pairs, so I think that extra went over my head.
I did forget one interesting cameo that happened during the whole assassination scene.
Right.
The woman that goes up to Natasha to get her autograph is her original voice actress.
I guess that's who she was, because it's like, she sounds so much like, I bet I know what they did.
Yeah. June Foray is the one who played her originally. Yeah. That's a pretty fun little thing they did there.
It was a great little cameo. I did enjoy that.
Another cameo that we didn't mention is that one of the Howard siblings, Rance Howard, is the one who gives them the polygraph test. So that was kind of just a small bit, but fun. Minnelli is played by Anthony Newley. I'm trying to think if I know him from something. He looked familiar, but I don't know.
It was fun that they dropped him in the laundry chute, and they're like, and she's like, Willie was so nice to us. We should give him a eulogy. I was like, was it no starch?
Of course, the annoying neighbors bring him right back up, and they're like, "We found your friend in the laundry chute."
Just put it away.
And he, of course, he is Larry Cedar. Larry Cedar's been in a lot of stuff over the years. I think we've covered some of it on this channel, actually.
But that's where they run into Paulovich for the first time.
Right.
Paulovich in quotation marks. As he's about to explain things to them, their neighbors show up with Willie's dead body at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paulovich takes off with the train schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when they also try to pass off Willie as not as a marriage counselor, but also as a diet guru, and leaves the bellhop sitting there trying to talk with him through the closet door.
They say he's like a powerful hypnotist, right?
Hypnotist, yeah.
They got that pretty quick. Like, it's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Another funny gag that happens. Actually, there were two that I find were funny. One of them was in my opinion, was a funny slapstick gag, where they're running down the fire escape. He's like, "I've got it." He does this jump for it and just falls flat on the ground. And he's like, was I close? And some guy was like, almost had him.
Yeah, just random passerby. Almost had him.
But then they go to catch a cab. Get me there. Can you get me to the train station by 11 o'clock for 100? It's like, sure. And takes him right across the street. That to me,
she's like,
change drives off.
She's like, I need at least 50 back. Sorry, lady.
I don't know why that one cracked me up as much as it did, but it just, to watch it just go basically right across the street. Here you are. It just, I don't know why that cracks me up as much as it did. Or the fact that Boris decided to touch the muffler to see if the thing was recently used.
At least he gets burned immediately, as would actually happen. So.
Oh, yeah. But they do end up finding the real Dr. Pavlovich when they get inside that vehicle to follow after. Find out that he was actually hiding in the vehicle the whole time. And they also get introduced to the actual chip itself because they had rigged that with a dynamite. I also find it funny when they knock the head off the dummy. Pavlovich is like, "Oh my God, you killed him!"
It's like, bro, what?
But the chip saves their lives, right, of course. But what did y'all think of that whole scene there, where they're introduced to Pavlovich, and then they're introduced to the other Pavlovich, and then of course
pretty quick, very fast.
I find that the plot of this picks up at a point and then just starts moving like at breakneck. Like they were just clowning around for a while, then they're like, okay, yeah, we got a plot to catch. So where we're going. Because it moves pretty quickly. Because once they escape the one thing, they explain the whole thing, and then they sleep through Pavlovich getting abducted again. But he actually leaves a clue that they get right away.
Right.
Yeah, the penny in the shoe, and it's like, well, what the hell does that mean? And it's like, it's so obvious. And then they go to Mount Rushmore, Abraham Lincoln on the penny, and it's like, that's obvious.
It's a nasal passage.
His nasal passage.
I did kind of groan at that.
But they think they've rescued Pavlovich himself, but they knew about Krigor, his twin brother. And of course, those of us who are watching it realize, wait, no, those are the shoes. Don't do it, man. How he managed to get himself tied up upside down.
I think my favorite line is when Natasha says, "I feel like I in Alfred Hitchcock movie."
Yes. Definitely some North by Northwest stuff going on there.
Right.
But the way that they find out, of course, Pavlovich ends up, Krigor ends up basically holding the real Pavlovich and Boris and Natasha under gun. And he was like upset because Pavlovich was going to mail like the chips to every country in the world, and so that nobody had it. And he wanted to start a bidding war so that he could, make money himself. Then they think they're saved when the FBI guy comes in, but finds out that he's actually a double agent working for the insurance companies, who, especially the car insurance companies, who want that stuff under wraps because that could really ruin the whole insurance game, insurance racket. Sad thing is, I could actually see that.
And actually, that the way that he explained it kind of made some sense, because then if he'd gotten that chip, then nobody would have to pay car insurance at all. So I actually think that that would have been, even though it would have been criminal for him to steal the chip for that, it still is a very good idea to save people a lot of money.
No, he's not trying to do that. He was working, like Brandon said,
He's trying to put
for
it
the insurance companies. He wanted people to be paying that money.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, the way it sounded to me was that people wouldn't have to pay for car insurance at all, and there would be less crashes.
Well, that's why he wanted to stop it, because there'd be less crashes. It's like, what would happen if there were no more car crashes? Like, the insurance companies need to have this put under wraps until they figure out a way how to get around this.
Right. They wanted to like sit on it and like backwards engineer it down to be less effective. It was so crazy.
And then, of course, Toots and Harv arrive, and it turns out that they're actually undercover agents, Moose and Squirrel.
Indeed.
I thought we were friends. And it's like, well, I mean, you could be friends now.
Or your old adversaries. Which I think you had a big problem with that one. I remember, Dave, you were saying you didn't care for that twist.
It was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, I didn't entirely like that twist a little bit, just because it was all of 5 minutes in the last minute of film.
Well, supposedly there were some, and I'm not really sure how this works exactly, because if you had a whole movie centered around Boris and Natasha, but according to IMDb, there was some sort of rights issues that prevented them from actually having Rocky and Bullwinkle as characters. So Moose and Squirrel was sort of a way to reference them without necessarily ruining that. I don't know why. I don't know what the rights issues were, but I would have been more disappointed if they went through the whole movie and made no reference whatsoever to the characters, you know?
Yeah. I kind of found it as a funny little twist at the end.
Yeah.
It goes with the tongue-in-cheek humor of the movie.
Right.
To have something like that just turn up. And watching it again and seeing little hints that they gave you a little ways along about them being Moose and Squirrel, helps as well.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of give you little winks and nudges.
And they really were in very convenient places, like,
yeah,
so frequently. It makes, I ground, but I was also kind of like, this doesn't make sense, you know?
And of course, Fearless Leader then shows up at the end. It's like, shut your mouth. He's like, I'm going to kill all of you people. But first off, he throws the pistol down with all the other guns that were just sitting in a pile. Then Natasha manages to finagle the electric, which, but Fearless Leader was distracted because of Sid Haig coming back. Give us the egg of Kiev! And shut up! And he shoots him.
That was very fun to see him. I had no clue at all, like he was going to be in this.
It was a fun little There's some fun cameos in this one.
Yeah, he just randomly shows up.
So they ended up getting into a Mexican standoff essentially because Natasha took the lights off, and they all got their guns except for Boris, who obviously is standing in a threatening posture with his fists up.
Obviously.
But he brings the dynamite to the party.
Mm-hmm.
And throws the dynamite on top of the pile of microchips and blasts them all the way back to the beginning of the movie.
Right.
With Palovich in there with them in the balloon.
Which is absolutely an example of 60s cartoon logic. No
yes.
question. And I mentioned earlier him cursing the cops for taking his dynamite, but I don't know if we mentioned the follow-up, which was he did show Natasha that he had some in his coat that I always keep some for a rainy day or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they end up saying, it's like, well, we've got the egg of Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Tahiti, because I think it was like, that was one of hers, like, I always want to see Tahiti.
Right. And it's funny because I'm watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, and there's that whole Tahiti subplot in the first season. It's a magical place.
They go with Palovich, and of course it does that reoccurrence to that line at the beginning. I thought you said there were two of them.
Yeah.
For a moment, I thought I saw three.
Yes.
But I mean, they had that giant Fabergé egg worth probably a freaking fortune, so they were probably set for life with that.
Mm-hmm.
Going to Tahiti during hurricane season or monsoon season, and of course, lots of different like callbacks. So, what about these or that? And they end it with a typical Rocky and Bullwinkle, two title ends. Like, join us next time for, I can't remember what the first one, but I know the second was like, and the Megabytes back or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But that was Rocky and Bullwinkle. What did y'all think of the ending?
I thought it was fine, although it did feel kind of like Boris maybe didn't learn anything from his experiences, but that's kind of how he's supposed to be, I guess. But
he introduced Natasha as his girlfriend.
Well,
yeah,
that is a great improvement. He was still making her carry stuff for him, though.
She was enabling him still.
It shows that he made a couple of steps forward.
Yeah.
He just is coming from so far behind. But I am reminded. But I am honestly reminded of the end of that one Family Guy episode or something. Someone said something to the effect, "We all learned a valuable lesson," and Peter's like, "Nope."
Yeah, Peter never learns a lesson.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right for Boris.
I think the character in Despicable Me reminds me of this Boris.
Yeah, a little bit. Grew.
Definitely the accent.
Drew.
Now, supposedly, they originally wanted to cast Danny DeVito and Angelica Houston. That would have definitely been an interesting pair. They did have some good ones here, I think.
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah, Danny DeVito was young enough back then that he could have done it pretty effectively. I think he was in his 40s back then. 40s? No, late 40s back then.
He was busy being the Penguin. This 92, right?
Yeah, this was
he was also busy trying to be in as many movies with his wife as possible too at that point in time too.
Oh yeah, that would have been interesting having Rhea Perlman as Natasha.
Well, I was actually thinking she could be a good substitute for Andrea Martin as the role of Agent Squirrel.
Yeah, Toots. She would have been a good Toots.
But yeah, it'd be interesting.
It's hard to really think about because it's kind of that short, squat guy, but then to have the same personality as the cartoon would have been different.
Yeah.
But I also understand they kind of wanted to make them a little bit more bumbling for the slapstick on it.
Yeah.
And they weren't nearly as bumbling in the cartoon. They were just kind of there to be a little foil for Rocky and Bullwinkle, always leaving dynamite or something in their way.
Like if they had
They
wanted
kind of always reminded me of like one of the villains in like the Batman 1960s, because they always ended up doing like hanging you by a moment on some of those ending episodes into the next one. Will Moose and Squirrel come out of this in one piece. Stay tuned with us next time here.
There's definitely a similar vibe, although I would say most of the Bat villains probably could easily outdo Boris and Natasha in terms of intelligence and cunning. Most of them. But I could have actually seen them on that show. I would believe it.
Yeah, the whole of it was interesting. I find it a fun little slapstick comedy of the era.
Actually, earlier Dave was talking about John Lovitz. I could have seen him as Boris too.
Yeah,
that would have been a potentially.
And I do agree with Dave. I think that John Lovitz could have made a fun announcer guy as well.
Yeah.
Though the guy who did the announcer in this was so spot on, I couldn't really think of replacing him, really.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about...
Did anybody else notice we got a post-credit scene, pretty much?
Yeah, we did. We did.
No, I had all these terrible experiences at Jellystone when I was a kid or whatever it was. I think that was a Yogi one, right?
Jellystone was Yogi,
yeah. Or did he actually say Yellowstone? Because I thought he was making a Yogi Bear reference.
I do know
the
that.
Whole world of these affiliated characters I didn't know about. So.
Well, Yogi is Hanna-Barbera, right?
Yeah, Yogi is Hanna-Barbera.
Yes. That would be a
rival company. Okay.
So maybe that's why, if they were talking about a horrible experience at Jellystone, maybe that was a dig at.
Nice.
Maybe.
Let's say this is one that if you really want to watch it, it is available on Tubi for free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can track down the DVDs,
I might have to try.
I don't think they're super expensive. I just think that they're hard to find. Let me just take a quick go on eBay to see.
I could see this getting like a Shout release or a Arrow maybe,
or a begrudging Kino Lorber release.
I could see Kino releasing this one. Oh yeah, I mean, there's a listing on eBay for $10 for this DVD.
Okay.
It's not that rare.
Their surly customer service on social media. It's like, well, we have it and we released it, but we hated it. They were talking about another title, and they basically said exactly that. And it's like, damn, guys, really?
Yeah, I do think that they could do I think Kino Lorber would do this, just because 80s and 90s comedies, they seem to release like a dime a dozen. And they sometimes do those that are lesser known like this too. So that would be right down the alley for them.
Yeah.
I could see I could see the Warner Brothers Archive doing it too, if they had gotten access to
this is Warner, right?
Yeah, this isn't Warner.
Yeah, so Warner Archive would not release this one.
Oh, by the way, I did check, Dave. Kenny did not die from the baked potato in the first episode. He was hit by a car, so I knew it.
Yeah, the first one was about aliens.
Yeah, he gets hit by Officer Bob Brady's car. Like, he just backs up over him.
And unless you're talking about the Santa Claus versus Jesus fight that happened before that, but I don't know whether he died in that one or not, because that wasn't really an episode. That was just more of like a production test.
I swear I remember them
It was a
operating.
Christmas party.
I'll have to rewatch the first episode.
Well, they did. It was in the South Park movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then they said like, well, it's a success. Oh, but I'm sorry. We accidentally replaced your heart with a baked potato. You have X seconds to live, and then it blew up.
I guess I just always associated it with the first South Park episode, so maybe I combine the two. If it's not, then
Actually, my favorite one was the first one that Kenny survived to the end. I think it was a Christmas. It was the Christmas one where they were not allowed to do like any traditional Christmas stuff, so they ended up doing the boring one. And Kenny was always in these super dangerous situations, and he lived to the very end of the episode. And he was like, he lived. But
yeah. In Spirit of Christmas, they don't even have names apparently. So I guess it's technically, I'm pretty sure they do kill him, but I don't think he's called Kenny yet.
So, production design.
Yeah.
There were some interesting little effects. Like I say, there's the exploding Kalashak. And they had some fun stuff, like they had that chase scene at the beginning. They had several interesting effects, other than the rewind function. But what did y'all think of the production design?
That was good.
Solid. Very, very, very believable explosions. Like you can tell they really did those, much, same as any other old movie, but there was kind of some extra oomph in there, it felt like. So pretty satisfied.
I don't know why I keep thinking about the exploding Kalash, but I keep thinking of him with that grenade and the potato. How about you, Tammy, Dave? What did y'all think of the special effects or production?
Well, I thought the production was pretty decent, at least for its time. It's not as I would say it's not as bad as the apparent critics were actually like destroying it for at the time. Of course, I rarely ever watched reviews or read reviews at the time that I would have possibly watched this ad to make me sway either way watching it. So
I saw a lot of bad reviews for The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, but I don't recall any reviews for this movie.
So, but I guess overall, everything was believable. There were definitely some characters that I'll remember, and like I said, I swear I remember seeing the shoe part and then John Candy get exploded like before this, but I never attributed it to this movie until I watched it. So,
the whole potato scene is definitely classic.
So, all in all, I think it was a well-rounded, solid film. Tammy, what do you think? You're on mute, dear.
About the production?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I thought it was pretty decent. I mean, most of the stunts, I guess, are basically gag stunts. So I don't see, it's not. They're not like totally over the top. It's like. I guess I thought it was pretty important than when you're trying to make a cartoon into a movie, you know.
Well, what about so let's look at music. I, for one, I normally that kind of person like, yeah, it's all right, but I thought this one had really good music. I mean, not like music that I would buy a CD of necessarily, but when it comes to matching the tone of a cartoony slapstick thing, it really did a good job. Very high energy. And even the theme, that whole like good to be bad or bad to be good, that song, that also very catchy, very memorable.
Worth noting that this song is co-written by Bobby Womack and Linda Favila, performed by Sally Kellerman. So it's essentially a character song by Natasha. So that's pretty cool.
The theme?
Yeah. It's good to be bad that plays over the credits. Also, I want to note that the score is by David Kate. He has written, he did a bunch of good stuff over the years, mostly nothing you would really remember for the music, but he did do the score to Look Who's Talking 2, Problem Child 2, Dude, Where's My Car, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, but he also did the score to Ghost World, which is one of the best music themes ever written. And I don't care what anyone says, I will maintain that till the end of my days. It is one of the best. Mm-hmm. Technically, it's not a score so much as he wrote a few pieces of music for the movie. But so when I saw his name in the credits, I was like, holy shit, Dave Kate did this? So I definitely paid attention to the music. And I wouldn't put it on the same level as Ghost World, but I agree with Brandon that it was effective for what it was trying to be.
It definitely felt like something that just spun off of the original 60s show.
Right. Now, those movies we just mentioned, we did Ghost World, but we need to cover a couple of the areas. We need to do Dude, Where's My Car one of these days. And Harold and Kumar. That'd be fun. Yeah. Actually, for next year's theme, if we do the series theme, we could theoretically hit Harold and Kumar one of the months.
Yep, you could hit.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess that wraps us up with Boris and Natasha. Let's talk about favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let's do 3 basic stuffs. Favorite scene, favorite cameo. Because this particular movie had a lot of fun cameos.
Yeah.
And a favorite cartoon that you watched as a kid that was a bit older than when, like, for instance, well, like, say, Rocky and Bullwinkle would have definitely been for me because it came out in the 60s, but I was watching it in the 80s. So basically a cartoon that you used to watch that was significantly older than when you were watching the cartoon. So, well, let's start with you, Dustin. Favorite scene? All right, we'll come back to you. How about you, Dave? Favorite scene?
Damn it, I was talking the whole time.
You had mute on?
Yes, I did.
Well, go ahead, Dustin. Favorite scene?
I know you can see I had mute on. Well, like I said earlier, my favorite when I was little was Underdog. I really did enjoy that a lot. As for a favorite scene, I think it would have to be near the end where things kind of come full circle. It's like, wait a minute, were there 3 people in there? There were only 2 of them, right? Because that happens in the very beginning, and you're like, oh no, did the secret assassin sneak onto the balloon somehow? But then you realize it's like, oh wait, no, it's that scientist guy. And my favorite cameo would be Sid Haig, because I genuinely did not expect him to see him at all. And it was like, hey, there he is. You know. So kind of actually all three of my favorite things are sort of in one moment. Cool.
You know, it's weird because I didn't even think about Sid Haig the first time I watched the movie, but I watched the movie first in 1993, so you know.
I didn't know who he was back then, probably.
So, but it's
So
kind
that was great in the finale too, where he just like shows up. It's like he's been somehow chasing them this entire time and just now caught up after the egg.
only to be shot down by fearless leader.
Like how he just steps out with two guns because he knows he's gonna like dual wielding two guns because he knows there's that many people there. Anyway.
Oh, Tammy, favorite scene?
I guess my favorite scene is that whole little thing about them trying to get to America. You know, first they end up on the rowboat, and it's like, yeah, right, you know. Then they're climbing the mountain, then they're, you know, that whole little thing until they actually get to America. So I got a kick out of that. The cartoons I watched as a kid, I know some of the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner stuff was older. So,
that is true.
I used to watch that as Scooby-Doo.
Right.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting Scooby-Doo definitely was significantly older.
Yeah.
They just kept making it.
Yeah,
Scooby-Doo is just in your face all the time, you know?
I would be by my great-grandparents, and, you know, my great-grandpa would hear the TV on as he was coming down the hall, and he'd start going, Scooby, Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, even my dad liked Scooby-Doo, which he didn't really like much of anything.
Yeah, my papa liked watching Scooby-Doo with me.
Who was your favorite cameo?
My favorite cameo was the John Candy.
It was a good cameo.
Those eyebrows they put on him, like I didn't fully recognize him like right away.
Holy smokeronis.
And he didn't do his voice either.
No, he actually had a very legit Moscow Russian accent.
Yeah, it really threw me off.
What about you, Jake?
Well, as per usual, I have some difficulty picking a single favorite scene, but I do want to mention one that we haven't mentioned yet. It was one of my favorite quotes in the whole movie, and that was when they're first getting settled in to America, and they go to the mall, and there's that narration, and of course, no American mall would be complete without Aunt Benny's fine cutlery and automatic weapons shop. It's like, yeah, no, that is absolutely a staple of Americana there. And I would say, generally speaking, and this also factors into what Tammy just said, almost any scene where the narrator was narrating, I was very amused by the narrator. And there were several great scenes of narration. And that the trip to the mall was one, the introduction, and of course when they're trying to defect was definitely one of the best ones. And one other scene I'll mention is the one that leads into my next part. My favorite cameo has to be the John Travolta one, because again, that just made me crack up. I thought that was hilarious. I really like the John Candy one, but I was extremely amused that John Travolta showed up just to get a door slammed in his face. That made me very happy. As far as the older cartoons, I definitely grew up with the Bullwinkle show, and it is a sentimental favorite. But I didn't watch it as much as some of the other shows. And I watched Tom and Jerry. I watched the Looney Tunes. I watched Yogi Bear.
Tex Avery.
Was that
Tex Avery?
No, I did not actually watch much of that. I did watch. I feel like Garfield and Friends was more contemporary to me, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that was more contemporary.
I was going to say Garfield and Friends was coming out around that time.
Yeah.
In the mid-'80s. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that might have been a little older, but not by much. And I can't remember how much older Inspector Gadget was. But if I had to pick one that I know is older than me, I'd probably have to go with Scooby-Doo, because I know that has been around since at least the mid-'70s. So, yeah, I'll probably have to go with that one.
And actually, it started out with Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Yeah.
But,
88 was when Garfield and Friends came.
Oh, okay. So that's definitely more contemporary for me.
And Inspector Gadget was 1983, so maybe a little bit less contemporary, but not by much.
I tell you, though, that's one that hasn't aged well. It has one of the best themes in TV history, but it has not aged well.
But it stayed on for a while. So.
Yeah.
I remember really liking it. And some of the criticisms of it, where it's like, this doesn't make sense. It's like, yeah, it's an 80s cartoon. I mean, how many of them really made sense, man?
There were all kinds of 80s cartoons that were held to very different levels of sense.
Why is his niece always in so much danger? This is so irresponsible. It's like, you're kidding, right?
See, that's the thing. That's why it hasn't aged well for me, is when it comes down to it, he's even more incompetent, arguably, than Boris and Natasha. He's arrogant. He's misogynistic.
A little bit better if you understand where the source material came from, because when you're looking at Get Smart, which is where the character is based off of, and even used Agent 86's voice.
Right.
He was a less competent version of Agent 86, but he was Get Smart for kids.
Good times.
But so Dave, favorite scene, cameo, and favorite show, cartoon that you watched as a kid that was way before your time.
Okay. I guess. Okay. I'll start with favorite cameo was John Candy. I was amused by John Travolta showing up, but you gotta love a great potato explosion.
Right.
But favorite scene, I could almost go with that explosion scene, but I do like the part where he mentions the nasal canal with the nose on Mount Rushmore, especially since I've actually been to Mount Rushmore and seen it. So
I do love the whole explosion that they did, and you saw that the nose blowing smoke out the nose.
Yeah, right. Like it's right.
That lovely special effects there.
But one of my favorite, I had many favorite cartoons that were older than me. I mean, you could talk about He-Man, David the New, Gummy Bears, the Littles. I watched a lot of interesting ones.
Now, most of those will probably be contemporary to you because
Yeah.
a lot of those came out in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. I
No.
feel like He-Man mid 80s, wouldn't it?
80s. Maybe He-Man would have been contemporary to you. You're young.
Autobots, maybe?
What was that?
The original Autobots?
That was also in the early.
That was before, right?
Maybe.
That was way before Transformers, so.
I think I was alive when He-Man was out, but not when it was. But I wasn't watching TV when it was airing.
What about He-Man?
That
He-Man
is what I
definitely
said.
was
Yes.
one.
Yeah,
He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and She-Ra was.
When were those airing?
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was 1983 per IMDb.
Okay, so you're talking like older, like 1960s?
Or like probably something that was a good at least a decade, if not 2 decades before you would have been watching them.
Okay. I would have to say Looney Tunes would be one of them. Those, but Popeye the Sailor Man was.
Oh yeah, that definitely would count.
Huge.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Huge.
that's a good one.
Popeye the Sailor Man was huge. So was Betty Boop, and I watched a lot of those along with the cartoons.
Oh dear me.
I also watched a lot of the Tex Avery cartoons too at the time, and those were of that time period as well. So, and I love the fact that there were Betty Boop cartoons shorts and Popeye the Sailor shorts that were banned during wartime.
Oh yeah.
So
Where?
Okay, apparently Popeye the Slayer Man comes out next year.
Yes, it does. So I love it because even though I don't think it's going to be any good, I love a good dumpster fire, and heck, things are all going to burn down anyway. The world is going to burn down in the next 4 years, so I think it's going to be great to see some burn down with it.
That's one way to look at it.
It matches my mood. But as far as my favorite scenes were, I love the pairing of him jumping off the fire escape, missing by a hair, and having the one guy comment, "Yeah, you almost got him." Right. And then follow it right up with them taking a cab, paying $100 to literally go across the street. My favorite cameo is the original voice actress getting Natasha's autograph. I thought that was great. As far as cartoons, I mean, yes, I was a huge Rocky and Bullwinkle fan back when I was a little kid. But one that I'm surprised that some of y'all did not mention is the old Disney shorts, because I used to watch a lot of those as a kid, and most of those came out in the 60s and 70s. At 70s comes within that decade for me, but
I remember the original Steamboat Willie one, but there is an original animated short that I do like of Disney called Morris the Moose. That was before my time, and that's where a grandfather ant sits down and talks to his grandchildren ants about a little moose with big antlers and a big moose with small antlers, and they both come together as one.
And there were others that I really liked. I mean, I love the Hanna-Barbera stuff. I mean, Jabberjaw, the Flintstones.
I did watch some Flintstones. Yeah.
Which I did put the Jetsons. I did finally get a copy of the Jetsons because it was cheap on the sale. And I just need to get the Flintstones. But there were a lot of those. I mean, the Smurfs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the snorkel.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
if
the snorkeling now because it's too sweet, but I watched it then.
And if we're talking shorts that maybe weren't necessarily all one, I guess we could include a lot of the Winnie the Pooh shorts as well as ones that I would have enjoyed a lot back in the day. Some of those.
Oh, you mean the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh?
I think so. Well, that was more like an assembled.
That was the early '90s, wasn't it?
No, that
Yeah,
that was the 88 to 90. Well, 88 to 91. Okay, that was.
Yeah,
that was
but they had a live action television show of Welcome to Pooh Corner.
No, I'm
that they
thinking
had for many
animated.
years.
Oh, I don't
That
remember.
was an 80s one.
Animated. I'm thinking animated.
You don't remember? Well, I remember that, and I also remember having a floppy disk game of Winnie the Pooh on not a Macintosh, but floppy disk.
That creepy live action Winnie the Pooh was one of the first, back when Disney was kind of free-ish on the satellite dish.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was around 6-ish to 7-ish in the mid-80s, it was definitely going strong. That was early Disney Channel fare, actually, which is probably why I never saw it. Because that was actually one of the few original Disney Channel, early Disney Channel programming. That one, the Alice in Wonderland show that they did, which I was too old when that one came out. But yeah, some fun stuff. But that's it. I guess that's all we've got for that. And I will give it back to you, Dave, to wrap us up on this.
Alrighty, well, hopefully you ladies and gentlemen out there have enjoyed our discussion on this finely tuned Oscar-worthy contender of its time. So let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion, what you thought of the film, and whether you've actually seen the film or know about it in general. But let's tell you all a little bit about ourselves and go around the room. Let's start with you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I have a YouTube channel for horror movie stuff, the Crypt of Horrors. I used to do pickup videos where I would go out and find cool stuff used at all of the places around town. But most of those places have closed, and I've been incredibly broke for the last year, so there hasn't been much new stuff, but I'm trying to figure something out. So go subscribe to the Crypt of Horrors and give me reasons to do stuff. So my Instagram has the same name, and I post better on there usually, Crypt of Horrors, and I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky as Cryptaxis or Cryptaxis. So make me use Blue Sky more because it sounds like it's actually better. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight.
Good night.
All right. Good night. Thanks for coming on. Alrighty, heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I might go on this channel and another one with Dave and talk to other people about the movies and get their opinions and check out a lot of times unique movies like today's. And it's usually a lot of fun, and I have my own collection, and that's about it for right now. Now that summer ended, so the car has turned into Sleeping Beauty.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Kotobukijake. I am the co-host of SeptumSin vs. the World, where we do fun stuff from time to time. And which includes, I guess, is this week that we'll be covering Cabaneri.
Oh yeah, Wednesday.
Oh, so we got that to look forward to. But I keep very, very busy much of the time because I do have my full-time job, but I also have way too many hobbies and not enough time for them. It is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writers Month, so I'm trying to get some writing done. Also, have other writing I'm working on, not so much of a creative sort, but also been trying to get a little bit of acting in and just reading and all the stuff, not to mention that trying to get outside and keep my head on straight, which I have to get outside from time to time to do that. But, I still make time to. Well, and every now and then I get some viewing in that is not related to the channel. I've been doing some recent trips out to the bird, and I'm hoping to make out one or more times in the next couple weeks as well to see some stuff. I think I haven't missed the viewing yet for Metropolis or for Blood Simple, but I don't know if I'm going to make either of those, but hopefully. But I do make time to watch stuff for this channel. You never know what we're going to see coming down the pike. This month certainly has been a relatively random month, and that's always fun. It's good to see lots of different stuff. So it's always fun to join these folks and talk movies with them.
Alrighty. Well, if that's it, so then I'll head over to Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Well, I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We love our physical media, and we have a channel dedicated to that. Of course, the thing that we're updating the most on is every week we are actually almost wrapped up for season 1 of Tabletop Horror, which is, by the way, one of our big shows there. Gosh, I don't remember what episode we are on now or what's next in that one, but check us out every Friday. We got some pretty cool obscure stuff that we cover. And then I am actually, I just wrapped up some of the filming. We're going to try and sneak in some daytime filming either Wednesday or Friday if we get a chance for the short event report, which is going to be in the second Amityverse movie. And that's crowdfunding now if you want to help push that in. I think there's actually a little part for a person to scream in my short. If y'all want to purchase that. No, but it's going to be fun. I have a lot of high hopes. Jake and I actually filmed 90% of it today, so I hope to get it finished by next week. And I guess, Dave, you can circle back to me when you're done, and I'll let everybody know what we're doing next month.
Sure thing. And thanks once again for listening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Striggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having. I think we've covered a lot of films over this year, and we've just got one more month before we do our yearly review. And it's some exciting stuff. But I do moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also go on almost every Sunday, although I was a little bit under the weather this last Sunday. We'll be coming back to this Sunday to finish up the month with Ringu 2. So look forward to that. But I do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time. I do some gameplay of some games that I pick up from time to time. So check some of that out. As I was telling some of the guys before, I've written a lot of things over the years that could be turned into music. And I have been working with an AI app to put some of these lyrics to fruition and I've had mild success at putting together at least a somewhat album of what my band would have probably put out at that time, and I'm working on the second one, at least on that front and all that jazz. So I've been working to try to get some of my stuff to having music. Let's put it that way. So not looking to get any money for it or towards it or anything. Just want to say that, hey, I'm an artist and I have some creativity. But do check out both channels. And heading back over to you, Brandon.
Well, we got quite a month. Hopefully I can get all the little thumbnails done in time, but we have a New Year's recap at the end of December, where we're going to talk about all the films we covered in 2024, right before the New Year's. And because of the placing of the holiday, we should, for the most part, have people all throughout the month. So we're trying to, of course, do holiday-centric films for December. So we're going to be right before Christmas a week. We're going to hit 2 shorts, Charlie Brown Christmas and Mickey's Christmas Carol. Then we're going to cover a French film. I just realized we have 2 French films this month. Odd. In any case, a French film called Deadly Games, so kind of French Home Alone in a lot of ways. And then we have the Muppet Christmas Carol. But then next week, we have another French film called Joyeux Noël. Which, you know what surprises me is I always thought that was on Criterion, but it's not. So that's one that should be on Criterion. But that'll be next week, and Jacob will be leading us in that, as he would for the artsy stuff. So we will see you all next week for that.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you can look forward to a lot of that. And on that note, everyone say good night. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Night.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.